Hundreds of new Democrats are in Winnipeg to pick a new leader. They're focused on rebuilding a party struggling.
It's a pivotal time in our party's history.
The party right now is not at a great spot, but there's also a lot of opportunity for renewal.
The federal party bringing out its most popular provincial politician to rally the crowd.
So in order for us to have a strong Canada, we need a strong federal NDP.
But right now, the NDP is weak. It holds just 6 seats in the House of Commons, down one after Nunavut MP Lori Idlout crossed the floor just weeks ago. And the party is deeply in debt, some $13 million owing.
So looking at 2026 overall, our financial position remains stable, but again, like I said, it is tight.
And then there's the polls. A new Abacus data survey shows more than half of the respondents say the NDP is not relevant.
Right now, when we look at the polls, we see single digits, low double digits sometimes.
It'll be up to a new leader to take all of this on. Former leader Jagmeet Singh lost his seat, his party taking a moment to honor him, Canada's first racialized party leader. In total, 5 candidates are running to be the NDP's next leader. 2 have emerged as frontrunners with very different visions for the future. Edmonton MP Heather McPherson.
We see how working class Canadians are being left behind. I'm the only one in this race that is a member of Parliament and that can start doing work on day one.
And filmmaker and activist Avi Lewis.
Something is wrong in our economic arrangement in Canada, and we need a voice for the 99% to actually fight for those solutions.
Whoever wins faces a monumental task, rebuilding the party financially and trying to turn it into a competitive option for Canadians. David Thurton, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Let's talk about the Winnipeg Convention, because this is where it definitely gets. This is where the veil comes off, really, for me, and the entire time leading up to this. And I would like to spend a little time here because I think this Winnipeg Convention is actually one of the most clarifying political events in recent, left-wing Canadian history, not because of what happened inside, but because of what happened outside and what happened in the months leading up to it. And those things very much show us what the NDP actually is versus what it is claimed to be here. And so the sequences, and I want you to just sit with the sequence as I go through it, because each piece individually might seem like a procedural dispute, a bureaucratic decision, whatever. But when you lay them out together, what you're looking at is a deliberate and systemic suppression of a specific political argument, not just people, an entire argument. The argument that Canadian foreign policy, military spending, and complicity in what is happening in Gaza are legitimate subjects of debate inside the NDP's own leadership race. So going back to November 2025, author and journalist Yves Engler applies to enter the NDP leadership race. And look, whatever you think of Yves Engler's politics, whatever you think of his methods, I am a supporter. But if you aren't, put that aside to just understand that he raised over $110,000 from a grassroots base without access to the party's membership list, without any institutional backing. And that in itself is not nothing. And it is a demonstration of real material support for a platform. And his platform was nationalizing energy, nationalizing banks, nationalizing telecom, cutting military spending, ending Canadian complicity in Gaza, and explicitly anti-imperialist, anti-NATO platform. Real stuff, not vague gestures, specific structural demands, okay? So November 25th, 2025, the party's vetting committee rejects Yves Engler's application. The stated grounds are extensive. They cite harassment, intimidation, Russian state propaganda, anti-Semitism even. And this is one of my favorites, a, quote, unclear commitment to the NDP, which they supported by referencing a Blue Sky account impersonating Yves Engler that had posted about running for the Greens, an account that, very clearly was fabricated. And this is the thing, none of these characterizations were tested before the members or anybody It wasn't any type of democratic process. No member voted on whether Yves Engler should be in the race. An unnamed 3-person committee made that call, and that was it. He was done. Step 2, at the beginning of this year, January 2026, Bianca Mugyenyi enters the race, a veteran organizer, former director of the Canadian Foreign Policy Institute, co-founder of the LEAP, which is the same organization as the party's now leader, A.B. Lewis, along with his spouse, Naomi Klein, who is also a well-known author and journalist. By the way, which is a detail worth holding on to, right? And so Bianca comes in being very transparent about it. If the party reverses its decision on Yves, she's going to step aside. And that transparency, the vetting committee decides, is itself disqualifying. A quote, explicitly proxy candidacy, which is apparently a breach of honesty and professionalism in their mind. And she is also out. And that's the thing, because she said at a press conference that you got to keep pointing to.
I stepped forward to carry a shared vision and a shared platform that was built collectively. And that is democracy. That is a process that is democratic. And instead of allowing members to evaluate those ideas for themselves, ideas that we hold dear, that are beloved to us, through unelected decision makers, unelected people made that decision for them, for the entire party. And this year, I became the first Black woman in 50 years to seriously contest the federal leadership of the NDP since Rosemary Brown in 1975. And that matters. It matters to me. I think it matters to the many young Black women, immigrant women, moms who wrote to me, many incredulous, saying, they didn't know someone like them, someone like me, someone who spoke the way that they spoke, that they could understand, could even try. And I think that showing people that they belong in leadership really matters, because we can't have the same old polished, say nice things, do nothing. Like we need bite. And the establishment talks a lot about diversity, but by blocking the first Black woman to seek this leadership in 50 years, it shows that diversity is welcome when it protects the status quo. I'm willing to say uncomfortable things. I'm willing to say you can't solve the housing crisis while pouring billions into NATO militarism. I'm willing to say that you can't claim moral leadership while being complicit in genocide, and that we have to bring our own country into that. And I'm willing to say that you cannot promise change while defending the same systems that created the crisis. So we can't continue to offer these same old safe critiques, no matter how fierce they may sound, while voting for the same war budgets that drain our communities. And so far from being a proxy, I think what is scary is that I am not. I spent more than 2 decades organizing in social movements in this country. I'm a journalist, I'm an author, co-founded the Canadian Foreign Policy Institute and directed it. I co-founded the LEAP, which many who are involved in this race are very familiar with, and launched the LEAP manifesto, got it prominent across the country. I've held a broad range of governance roles, chaired even as a student at McGill, at Concordia, chaired the Canadian Federation of Students, Quebec. I built campaigns, organizations, coalitions for climate justice, economic justice, peace. I was the president of the Cuberg Concordia board of directors. I mean, what are they talking about?
And I mean, yeah, like 1,000,000%. And what else is there to say? What else is there to add? The committee's logic, as Canadian Dimension noted, meant that transparency itself became grounds for disqualification. A candidate, like another candidate who had concealed their motivations, would have had a better shot than the one that stated them plainly. And that in itself is just like, it's so ridiculous and redundant. And that is the system working exactly as it's designed. And so here we are in March 2026, the voting opens. The NDP terminates Yves Engler's party membership entirely, no right of appeal. And then 3 days before the convention, they strip Barry Weisletter's convention credentials. Anybody who knows the NDP in like activism in Toronto and in Canada. Barry Weisletter is the NDP Socialist Caucus chair. He's the chair of Socialist Action. He has been a mainstay. He's been attended federal NDP conventions for decades and decades. Kicked him out. He was gone. And again, I'm not a fan of Barry, but like, if you're going to be democratic, if you're going to be the new Democratic Party, this is democracy. How are you supposed to talk about unity? How are you supposed to talk about working together, building together, if you're banning some of the most core individuals of the party, at least the left flank, from participating? It's just a joke. It's a complete joke. So to recap, they blocked Yves Engler's candidacy. They blocked the replacement candidacy. They expelled the candidate from the party. They stripped the organizer's credentials so that he couldn't even be president on the convention floor. And then they opened the convention and talked about renewal and unity. Like, just an absolute joke. Like, just a complete and utter egregious joke. And so, just to be precise about what is actually being excluded here too, and like the reason that people are upset who are supporters of a more radical politics, the most important thing to point out in everything that I'm going to say here is that what was being excluded was not individuals. You know what I mean? What was being excluded was an argument, specifically that Canada participates in imperialism, that the Canadian military spending and foreign policy alignments are legitimate subjects of debate, and that what is happening in Gaza constitutes a genocide, full stop, and that resistance to it is justified, legally justified. And Canada is complicit in these central core issues that anybody who is like quote-unquote anti-imperialist, quote-unquote anti-Zionist, should absolutely not be standing alongside the Canadian state. They should be defiantly resisting it. These things, these issues should be the core central issue to any type of NDP leadership race. That argument, that specific material structural argument, was ruled out of bounds before any member had a chance to vote on it. And the mechanism was called vetting. The function is just outright censorship. And this is not new. This is not the NDP having an unusually bad year. The pattern goes back to the party's founding predecessor in 1949. The CCF expelled 2 elected Manitoba legislators for criticizing the Marshall Plan and NATO. In 1950, Dorothy Steeves, one of the party's most experienced foreign policy thinkers, was blocked from delivering a full report at convention. The party secretary pressured her to moderate her positions before members could hear them. And what has changed? Not much. 2023, the Ontario NDP expels Sarah Jama. The specific targets change across 75 years, but the mechanism is essentially identical. And when foreign policy dissent to a unjust foreign policy from an anti-imperialist position emerges inside this party, the party removes it every single time, without exception.
We have to stop the war in Iran. It is causing a lot of suffering overseas. It is causing a lot of economic pain to working people here in Canada and across North America. And not a single Canadian should ever be put in harm's way to try and defend Donald Trump's foolish Iranian war. And I'll go a step further, and I'll say no American either. No American child from the blue collar or the middle class should have to die in Iran. Let the Epstein class fight the Epstein war.
Then you see, we have Wab Kinew getting up at the convention and giving a speech about being against war, being against civilian suffering, against reckless military adventurism. And it lands and people slop it up because it's designed to land. And then you step outside and there are protesters in the cold who are holding signs with Yves Engler, with Barry Weisletter, with people who've been saying these things for longer before any of these people were even in the leadership race. A man who has been coming to these conventions for decades, a man who has been writing about injustice, Canada's complicity in imperial injustice for decades. These people they can't get through the door. And inside the hall, like on the start of day 2. We had the raging grannies. Everyone's taking photos and it's warm, and the narrative is just like, it's just so wholesome. It's like, it's our wholesome big tent party, and then the people that we are literally not even allowing in the building. It's the same line between like symbolic opposition and structural opposition, between the kind of dissent you can absorb and photograph and put in the highlight reel, and the kind you can have, the kind that you have to manage and exclude and send outside to stand in the cold.